When I got the call about inheriting the old family property, I felt a swell of pride mixed with a strange kind of awe. "It's yours now," my aunt said, her voice trembling slightly. "Grandpa always hoped you'd keep it in the family." I could almost hear his warm chuckle, the way he'd talk about that land like it was a living thing, part of our blood and history. Growing up, that property was my sanctuary. I remember summer evenings chasing fireflies near the creek, Grandpa telling stories about how the land had been in our family for generations. I swore I'd protect it one day. Now, holding the deed felt like holding a promise, a piece of my roots I couldn't let go. But that excitement didn't last long. A few days after settling the paperwork, I heard whispers from the neighbors. "You've got to be careful," Mrs. Simmons warned me over the fence. "There's been some strange trucks around. Started digging near your property line." Her eyes darted nervously. "I don't know who they're working for, but it doesn't feel right." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Thanks for the heads up, Mrs. Simmons. I'll check it out." But inside, my heart started to race. Something felt off. That evening, I decided to walk the land. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the familiar trees and wildflowers. But what I saw made my stomach twist: heavy machinery parked where Grandpa's wild garden used to bloom, fresh dirt piled up, and what looked like foundations being poured right at the edge of my property. I stormed back to the neighborhood, catching up with Mr. Diaz, who was trimming his hedge nearby. "Hey, Mr. Diaz, do you know anything about the construction on my property?" I asked, voice tight. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "There's been talk. The HOA signed off on some deal with developers. Said it's for community improvement, but no one's told us much." Without my permission? I couldn't hide the disbelief in my voice. "That's what's got everyone worried," he replied grimly. "Feels like they're steamrolling over anyone who stands in the way." Back at the house, I sat with the deed in my hands, trying to process what I'd just discovered. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, someone was trying to take what belonged to my family. My mind raced, questions swirling. How could they ignore my ownership? Why wasn't I notified? And most importantly, what was I going to do now? I clenched my fists, feeling a mix of confusion and determination. I wasn't about to let this go quietly. This land was more than soil and trees, it was my legacy. And I was ready to fight for it. I didn't expect my first meeting with the HOA president to be anything less than a battle. When I walked into the community center that morning, I was ready to lay down my claim and shut down whatever nonsense was happening on my land. "Mr. Carter," the woman behind the desk said without looking up. "You're here about the development issue?" "That's right," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I inherited that property. And I want to know who authorized construction on it without my permission." She finally glanced at me, cold, calculating eyes that barely masked her irritation. "The HOA board approved the project months ago. You must have missed the notices." "I didn't receive any." "And that property is under my name," I said, sliding the deed across the table. She glanced at it, then smirked. "That may be, but the HOA has community plans everyone agreed to. Individual ownership doesn't override that." Her tone was dismissive, like I was a child questioning an adult. "I think there's been a mistake. I'm not here to argue. I just want to protect my family's land." The woman, Karen Mitchell, the HOA president, leaned forward. "Protection? From progress? You need to understand that if you stand in the way, you're making enemies." The subtle threat hung heavy between us. After the meeting, I felt smaller than I had before, like the system was designed to crush anyone who challenged it. My anger mixed with frustration. How could they just ignore me? And worse, how could they talk to me like I was insignificant? Determined not to back down, I spent the next few days digging through county records, zoning maps, and property archives. I visited the local land office twice, asking pointed questions. Has there been any sale or transfer of my property rights to the HOA or any developer? No records here, the clerk said. Looks like it's still under your name. That confirmation was a small victory, but it only deepened the mystery. How could they justify bulldozing my land without legal grounds? One afternoon, while poring over documents at my kitchen table, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Henderson from 2 houses down. I heard about the trouble you're having, she said gently. If you need help, I'm here. This neighborhood's seen Karen's tactics before. You're not alone. Her voice was warm, and for the first time since this started, I felt a flicker of hope. We need to expose what's really going on, she added. There's more to this than you realize. Keep your eyes open. Her words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. The fight ahead suddenly seemed clearer but heavier. This wasn't just a property dispute. It was a battle against a system that thrived on silencing people like me. My heart raced with anxiety but also a growing fire. I wasn't going to let my family's legacy be erased quietly. I was ready to fight. I thought I knew the land's story, what I'd inherited was clear on paper. But as I started digging deeper, I found things that didn't add up. The more I looked, the more the trail led to forged signatures and fake documents tucked away in dusty county files. One afternoon, while sifting through a box of old records at the county clerk's office, I found a survey map that didn't match the one I had. This can't be right, I muttered to myself. The property lines had shifted, oddly contorted to slice off a chunk of my land. Curious, I pulled out a stack of papers that looked like contracts. The signatures on them were shaky, uneven, clearly forged. Who did this? I whispered, heart pounding. I called Mrs. Henderson immediately. You won't believe what I found. It's like they've been rewriting history to steal the land. Her voice was grim. That sounds like Karen's handiwork. She's been known to manipulate the rules to her favor. I felt a sharp sting in my chest, betrayal cutting deep. This wasn't just a dispute, it was a full-on corruption scheme. Later, I confronted the HOA president over the phone. These documents are fraudulent. How do you justify this? Karen's voice was cold, dripping with disdain. You're stirring up trouble where none exists. Maybe you should consider what's best for the community instead of clinging to old grudges. I felt anger rise, but I kept my voice steady. This is my family's legacy. I won't back down. She laughed, low and cruel. Be careful, or you might regret it. That threat hung in the air long after the call ended. I knew I needed help, someone who understood the law and could navigate the mess Karen had created. A friend recommended a lawyer, Ms. Ramirez. When I first met her, I expected the usual skepticism. Instead, she looked me in the eye and said, I believe you. This isn't just a property case, it's about standing up to a system that's been abused. Her confidence lifted something inside me. Can you help me stop them? She nodded firmly. We'll uncover every lie, every forged paper. They won't get away with this. For the first time, I felt I wasn't alone. But as we prepared to take action, the threats escalated. One night, I found an anonymous note slipped under my door, drop this now, or face the consequences. My hands trembled as I read it, but I refused to let fear control me. I stared out my window, thinking about Grandpa, about the years our family had cared for that land. I whispered to myself, they can threaten me all they want, but this fight is bigger than me. I have to see it through. I gripped the note tightly, determination hardening in my chest. No matter what came next, I wasn't backing down. The harassment started small, anonymous calls late at night, threatening notes slipped under my door. Then, one afternoon, 2 men showed up unannounced while I was outside inspecting the property. They didn't introduce themselves, just stood there, watching me with cold eyes. Who are you? I asked, heart pounding. One stepped forward, voice low. Just here to make sure you understand the neighborhood rules. I didn't buy it. This is my land. No one asked for your permission to be here. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Maybe you should reconsider your position. I shut the gate firmly behind them, the feeling of unease settling deep inside me. Then the legal notices started arriving. Letters thick with legal jargon, threatening fines and lawsuits if I didn't cease interference with the development. Each one felt like a punch in the gut. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we ended up here. My wife tried to comfort me, but the strain was clear in her eyes. Maybe this is too much for us, she whispered one evening. I'm scared, and I don't want to lose everything. I wanted to believe it would get easier, but doubt gnawed at me. Was I fighting a losing battle? Was my stubbornness putting our family at risk? Neighbors noticed the tension. Mrs. Ellis across the street avoided eye contact, while Mr. Gomez quietly offered a nod of encouragement when I passed. It was clear many were scared to get involved. One afternoon, I caught Mrs. Parker in her garden. You've been quiet, I said. Is everything okay? She glanced around, then lowered her voice. Karen's reach is long. People don't want trouble. I understood. Fear had silenced many. But I couldn't stay silent. I started knocking on doors, asking neighbors if they'd faced similar issues. At first, the responses were cautious. Then, stories emerged: harassment over minor infractions, threats over yard decorations, fines for things no one else noticed. I got a notice for my rose bushes, Mrs. Henderson told me quietly. Said they were non-compliant. Mr. Lopez shared how Karen tried to get his business permit revoked over a parking dispute. Their stories fueled my fire. One evening, as I sat with a growing pile of testimonies, I told my wife, this isn't just about my land. It's about all of us. We have to stand together. She smiled faintly, hope flickering in her eyes. Then we fight. Isolation still gripped me some days, but with every shared story, every nod of support, I felt less alone. The community's silence was breaking. And so was my fear. I clenched my fists, ready for whatever came next. I knew the fight wasn't just about the present, it was about the past, too. So, I decided to dig deeper into the history of the land. My first stop was the local archives. The musty smell hit me as I stepped inside, rows of old documents lining the walls. Can I help you? The clerk asked, looking up. I'm researching the property on Maplewood Lane, I said. It's been in my family for generations. I want to understand its history. She nodded, leading me to a section filled with maps and deeds. Hours passed as I sifted through yellowed papers and handwritten notes. Each document felt like a puzzle piece. Later, I visited my Aunt Clara. Do you remember Grandpa's stories about the land? I asked, hoping for more insight. She smiled sadly. He said this land wasn't just soil and trees, it was a legacy. A place where our family's roots ran deep. Her words echoed in my mind. This was more than property, it was part of who I was. That evening, I attended a meeting at the Historical Society. I wasn't expecting much, but when I mentioned the land, one man raised his hand. I've been watching what's happening. Karen Mitchell has a long history of bending rules and intimidating neighbors. Do you have proof? I asked. He hesitated, then handed me a file. Here are records of past violations and complaints against her. It's a pattern. As I flipped through the pages, frustration boiled inside me. How had she gotten away with this for so long? How many lives had she disrupted? Still, knowledge gave me power. I started to connect the dots between her past corruption and what was happening now. The pieces fit together like a dam about to break. That night, I called Ms. Ramirez. I've uncovered more than I thought. There's a trail of deceit and abuse. We can use this. Her voice was steady. Good. We'll build a case no one can ignore. But with every step forward, the weight of it all settled heavy on my chest. Are you okay? My wife asked gently. I'm angry, I admitted. But I'm also ready. This land is our legacy, and I won't let her steal it. She took my hand. We're with you. I stared out the window, thinking about Grandpa, about the stories and sacrifices that had come before me. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, I felt like I held the truth. And truth was a weapon no one could silence. Walking into that courtroom for the first time, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The room smelled like stale air and tension. I glanced around at the suits and papers, feeling completely out of place. Remember, stay calm, Ms. Ramirez whispered, gripping my arm gently. I'll explain everything as we go. But as the judge started rattling off terms like motions, hearings, and counterclaims, my mind spun. What did all this mean? I nodded along, but inside, panic was creeping in. Your Honor, the opposing counsel said, voice slick, we challenge the validity of the plaintiff's claim due to alleged procedural errors. I squeezed my eyes shut. Procedural errors? What errors? Was this just another way to wear me down? Ms. Ramirez leaned close. They're trying to delay. Don't worry, we have evidence that'll hold. When she presented the forged documents I'd found, I felt a flicker of hope. The judge examined them carefully. This evidence is compelling, he said, and my chest tightened with relief. But that hope was short-lived. Weeks dragged on. Hearings postponed. More paperwork. It felt like running in circles. One afternoon, I overheard whispers in the hallway, rumors that Karen had been seen meeting with a local official. My stomach dropped. Do you think they're bribing someone? I asked Ms. Ramirez afterward. She didn't hide her frustration. It wouldn't surprise me. This isn't just about one woman. It's a system that can be manipulated. The thought crushed me. How do you fight a battle when the referee might be on the other side? I found myself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling. Why is this happening? I whispered to myself. Why is it so hard to get justice? One evening, my phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen, drop this now, or you'll regret it. Fear gnawed at me, but anger burned brighter. I called Ms. Ramirez. They're trying to scare me off. She's firm. We push forward. The more they try to silence you, the more they show they're afraid. Her words steadied me. At the next hearing, I spoke up. This isn't just my fight. It's for every neighbor who's been bullied, every family threatened. We deserve justice. I saw nods around the courtroom, quiet support that gave me strength. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth began to unravel. Karen's fraudulent claims started to look like house of cards. Still, the delays and manipulation made me realize this wasn't just about one corrupt person. It was a broken system that let her operate for so long. But I wasn't giving up. This land, I told Ms. Ramirez later, it means everything. And I'm ready to keep fighting until justice is served. She smiled. That's exactly the spirit we need. And with that, I knew the battle was far from over, but I was no longer alone. I knew I couldn't fight this battle alone anymore. So, I started knocking on doors, inviting neighbors to meet and talk openly about what was happening. The first few meetings were small, just a handful of us gathered in my living room, voices low, eyes cautious. Karen's been targeting all of us, Mrs. Henderson said, her hands trembling. It's not just about my garden anymore. It's about our whole neighborhood. That's why I'm here, I told them. We need to stand together, share what we've faced. Alone, we're vulnerable. Together, we're stronger. Stories poured out. Fines for things as simple as a swing set, threats over holiday decorations, and worse. Each tale fueled my anger and resolve. One night, during a meeting at the community center, I stood up and spoke from the heart. We're not just fighting for property. We're fighting for our dignity, our voices. Karen's power thrives on our silence. It's time to break that. Heads nodded, tears glistened. The room filled with a sense of unity I hadn't felt in weeks. But Karen noticed. Shortly after, whispers spread about her trying to sow distrust, accusing some neighbors of working against the community, trying to isolate me. One evening, I caught Mr. Lopez hesitating at my door. I don't want trouble, he said quietly. Karen's been pressuring me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We're stronger if we don't let her divide us. His eyes softened. I want to help. Despite moments of doubt, I felt a new strength rising from the support around me. I wasn't just a lone fighter. I was becoming a symbol for all who had been silenced. With every meeting, every shared story, we built something bigger than any threat. The community was waking up. And we were ready to reclaim what was ours. One afternoon, I was sorting through a pile of documents in my cluttered home office when I found it, a contract buried deep in the stack, marked, confidential. My hands shook as I unfolded the pages. It was a signed agreement between Karen and a developer, dated months before the supposed HOA approvals. This changes everything, I whispered. My phone buzzed suddenly. A text from an unknown number: stop digging or you'll regret it. My heart raced, but I refused to back down. Later, I shared the contract with Ms. Ramirez. This is the proof we need, she said, eyes sharp. It shows clear collusion and deception. But I couldn't ignore the danger. Karen's threats weren't empty words, they were warnings. At night, I lay awake, the weight of my family's legacy pressing on me. This land means more than just ownership, I told my wife quietly. It's about standing for what's right, no matter the cost. She squeezed my hand. We're in this together. The next day, I met with neighbors who'd faced intimidation. Their stories made me realize I wasn't just fighting for myself, but for all of us. With the contract in hand, I prepared for the upcoming legal showdown. My nerves buzzed like electricity, but my resolve hardened. This is it, I told Ms. Ramirez. Time to expose everything. As I walked into the courthouse that morning, a chill ran down my spine. The eyes watching me felt heavier than ever. But I held my head high. This was more than a fight for land, it was a fight for justice. And no matter what came next, I was ready. I sat in the courtroom, hands clenched tight, trying to steady my breath. The air was thick with tension, every whisper feeling louder than it should. Ms. Ramirez leaned over and whispered, "This is it. Stay focused." When I stood to present the evidence, my voice trembled at first. Your Honor, this contract shows clear collusion between Karen Mitchell and the developers. It's a deliberate attempt to steal my family's land. The room fell silent. I could feel every eye on me, the judge, the jury, even Karen herself, glaring from the other side. During cross-examination, Karen's lawyer was relentless. Mr. Carter, are you absolutely certain these documents are authentic? Couldn't they be fabricated? I swallowed hard, refusing to show doubt. I found them in the official county records. I have witnesses and experts who can verify their authenticity. The lawyer sneered. Isn't it true you've never been involved in legal matters like this before? Yes, I admitted. But that doesn't mean I don't know what's right. Ms. Ramirez presented witnesses, neighbors who recounted Karen's intimidation, and experts who explained the forged signatures. Their testimonies filled the room with a weight I hadn't felt before. At one point, the judge called for a recess. I stepped outside, heart pounding, feeling the weight of the entire community's hopes resting on my shoulders. Grandpa's voice echoed in my mind, reminding me why I fought. Back inside, Karen's defense grew more aggressive. She tried to paint me as a troublemaker, someone disrupting peace for personal gain. But I refused to be broken. When the jury finally deliberated, every minute felt like an eternity. I sat silently, eyes fixed on the door, willing justice to prevail. When they returned, the room held its breath. I looked at the faces of my neighbors in the courtroom, people who had stood by me, trusted me. This was more than just my fight. It was ours. And whatever happened next, I knew we had taken the first step toward reclaiming what was rightfully ours. The courtroom was deathly quiet as the judge cleared his throat. I felt every heartbeat pounding in my chest. After careful consideration, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Tears welled up, blurring my vision. Relief crashed over me like a tidal wave. "We won," I whispered, voice shaking. Karen sat frozen, eyes wide, the mask of confidence shattered. I saw the defeat in her glance, the weight of exposure sinking in. As the judge outlined her penalties, fines, removal from HOA leadership, and legal investigations, I felt justice settling in the air. She had underestimated us, but the truth was undeniable. Outside, neighbors flooded the lawn, cheering, hugging. Mrs. Henderson grabbed my hand, tears streaming. "You did it. We did it." The community that once feared her now celebrated reclaiming their voice and their homes. I stood on the porch, watching the empty lot restored, flowers planted where machines once tore through the earth. This land, our legacy, was ours again. But victory didn't erase the scars, on the land or in our hearts. I thought of the sleepless nights, the threats, the doubts. The fight was far from over. Healing would take time. Still, as I looked around, I saw a neighborhood reborn, stronger, united, hopeful. Karen's downfall was a warning, power built on fear never lasts. With a deep breath, I whispered, "This is just the beginning. We'll protect what's ours. Together." The first day back on the property was quiet but heavy. We started repairs slowly. Fixing fences, planting new trees where the machines had left scars. Each nail hammered felt like a step toward reclaiming what was lost. My wife watched me carefully one afternoon. "You've changed," she said softly. I nodded. "I have. This fight cost us more than I realized." "I saw you at your weakest and your strongest," she smiled. "We're still here, together." Family dinners became more important, a chance to rebuild the trust my absence had strained. My kids listened as I shared stories of Grandpa, connecting them to the land in a way words never had before. One evening, Mrs. Henderson stopped by with a basket of fresh tomatoes. "We're all in this together," she said. "You brought us back." Her words filled me with something I hadn't felt in months, hope. The community gathered for a small celebration, neighbors bringing food and stories. We laughed, cried, and remembered the fight that had nearly broken us but ultimately made us stronger. I thought about the lessons learned. Justice isn't just about laws, it's about people standing up, speaking out. I'm not the same person who first inherited this land. I'm someone who understands the power of persistence and the value of unity. Late at night, I sit on the porch, staring at the stars above our healed land. I feel Grandpa's presence in the breeze, in the rustling leaves. This legacy isn't just property, it's family, history, and hope. And I'll protect it for as long as I live. The fight taught me one thing: the battle for what's right never truly ends, it only changes shape. So, I started setting new goals, not just for myself but for the whole community. "We need to stay vigilant," I told the neighbors during one of our meetings. "This can't happen again. We formed a neighborhood alliance, a group dedicated to protecting our homes and land. Accountability, I said, is our strongest defense. We worked with Ms. Ramirez to establish legal safeguards. Clear property rights, open records, and regular community oversight. No more secrets, no more backdoor deals. Some neighbors still seemed wary, but many stepped forward, ready to help. I saw hope in their eyes, a shared determination to protect what we built. One evening, my wife asked, "Do you think we can finally move on?" I smiled, feeling the weight of our journey lift just a little. We have to. But we'll never forget. That struggle gave us strength. I thought about Grandpa and the legacy he entrusted to me. This land was more than a place, it was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that standing up matters. I looked out over the neighborhood, the sun setting behind familiar trees, casting a golden glow. Justice isn't just a court decision, I whispered to myself. It's persistence, courage, and the will to protect what you love. To anyone listening, I want to say, fight for what's right, even when it's hard. Your legacy matters. Your voice matters. Together, we are stronger. And together, we will endure.